stream is about to start. We'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Hello everyone and welcome to another meeting of the C++ Digital Signal Processing, JUCE, iPlug, and other interesting things meeting study group. And
Hello.
We have Fotis with us. Hello, Fotis.
Hello.
And we also have Bo and Cwits on the call.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
All right. So right before we started the meeting, Fotis was telling us about his experience trying iPlug 2 out. So yeah, give us the story, Fotis.
So iPlug 2 is a plugin framework developed by Ollie Larkin, who also has a GitHub repository with great open source resources, so he knows his stuff. And I befriended a guy from the Facebook group Audio Plugin Coders Guild. His name is Dom McSweeney, and he's a guitarist, YouTuber, and he works with Matthias of Shameless Plugs, the creator of several. Yeah, it's a great name for a plugin company. They have made a few very interesting freeware plugins, such as TildeQ, the DOM, and the Fuzzploid. And Dom doesn't have any experience with making plugins, but he did try iPlug 2. And within just one day, he managed to create a simple gain plugin. So I said, what the heck, I should try it too. I got jealous of Dom. So I installed the iPlug 2 as well. It doesn't need installation, it's standalone. I'm copying it to my other hard drive. I'm gonna share my screen in 6 minutes later. But before that, you guys can't show anything else. I can't show my Visual Studio yet. But yeah, so iPlug 2 seems to be very simple. It's like a stripped down version of JUCE, if you can call it that. And it comes with a sample project, which is a simple gain plugin with just a knob and a text box that you can write anything. It's the default text is hello iPlug 2. And the code seems simple enough. I think it's C++, I don't remember. But all you can change is the color of the background, the text, the size, and the position of the knob. And I managed to create a second knob just so I could play around. And the solution does create a standalone that works. I extracted the VST3 SDK that I downloaded from the Steinberg website into the iPlug folder. But unfortunately, I did build an SDK, a .vst3 file, which curiously seems to be a 32-bit VST3. I don't know why. And I loaded it into Reaper, and it doesn't work.
What happens?
Couldn't load it. I went into the menu in preferences where you see the drop-down menu that says plugins that fail to scan in the Reaper preferences. And my plugin appears there. And I clicked many times to rescan it and it still doesn't work.
Interesting. At least it shows up there. Last meeting we tried to load a plugin in both computer and it just didn't show up anywhere. No error messages, no nothing. It was as if the plugin didn't exist.
Yeah, a very similar thing happened to my friend Nathan Hood, aka Stony DSP. He's in our Discord. I don't know if he will be able to join us today, but he has made those biquad filters and nonlinear filters. And one of them, the bilinear EQ, didn't even show up in the plugins that failed to scan, like you said. So I did have a similar experience.
Yeah. I wonder if it has anything to do with signing the executable, because this can lead to issues. But if you are building it yourself, if you are downloading the plugin from GitHub as a release, so you're downloading the VST3, perhaps signing could be the issue. The operating system just refuses to load something that hasn't been properly signed, and in the case of macOS, even notarized by Apple. But if you are building the thing locally, it should not trigger any kind of gatekeeper. So I don't know. It is weird. I have run into that in Ableton Live. I mentioned this many meetings ago. It just wouldn't show up, and I just gave up because I had Reaper working, and I didn't even put the plugin in the system folder. I put it on my user folder. But still, it's kind of weird. Anyway, so
Ableton has a weird,
maybe there
weird
is
way
just
of
some
scanning plugins.
checkbox.
I'm talking to Nathan right now, but he's on the Discord chat and he can't join us, but he will say that he will watch the stream. Okay. I did find something just while you were talking. I was listening to you, but I also was loading Visual Studio, and I noticed that there is a drop-down menu that says Win32 and x64. So maybe that's the reason why it wasn't making a 64-bit VST3. So I'm gonna try building it again and then loading it in Reaper. By the way, it's okay. Is it okay if I run the evaluation version of Reaper? I still haven't bought it. I do plan to, but is it okay? Is it Justin going to kill me?
We are not here to judge.
Have break
He's that kind of guy.
To the 32 bits.
Yes, Lewis, what were you saying regarding the plugin issues?
Reaper have bridge to the 32 bits from 64, so I think problem is not there. Problem is somewhere else.
I know I'm just shooting fish in a barrel.
No.
Okay. Oh, and Nathan says hello. He says, please tell everybody I say hello. I'm just working on some more nonlinear filters. And he's currently in a place with a loud trap music.
Sorry. Sorry about that.
He can't listen to us. Maybe we should wrap. I'm building the thing again. Let's hope it works.
But while that is building, can you share with us the experience of using iPlug 2? You said that the code was cleaner, and I had a similar experience, but how did you like essentially the boilerplate code, right? And the whole onboarding experience of iPlug 2?
Yeah, it is seems to be very, what's the word? Very straightforward. I mean, the sample project is only 35 lines of code. Even less, because I'm counting the spaces. So maybe I can share my screen so you can see the code. I'm gonna share my whole desktop and start sharing. While is it building, you can see what's happening here. Boom. So this is, it's loading something. I haven't seen this thing before. I don't know what it is. But anyway, you can see here the beginning. This is where I did all the edits. So all I did was this is my antivirus. I use Kaspersky because this thing is using the audio, and Kaspersky is very suspicious for every app that's using the sound card. But yeah, all I did was copy paste the line. No, there it is. Hey, hello, Dom. Yeah. Oh, I can hear my voice in echo. No, I can't. Oh, it's responding to my microphone. If I turn up the gain, I can hear my voice in my headphones. Hello, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2. Can you hear an echo?
No.
No. So it's only happening on my end. Okay.
I suppose.
But whatever, it works.
Great.
So yeah. And so all I did was change the background to blue. It was gray, I think. I created the second knob, and that's it. And I inserted my own values so it appears to the top left. So here is me and Dom couldn't figure out how to change the font. I tried typing Arial or something right here, and it would produce an error. But yeah, all I did was copy, as I was saying, the line 21 into 22. So I created 2 knobs, and I changed the value here, vertical shift, into minus 220, and I added one more H shift, the horizontal. It's pretty straightforward stuff, and I didn't change anything here. Yeah, I changed the color, and that's it. Yeah, so what is this? It's a C++, right? Cpp?
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
It is. Great. So I made my first C++ plugin. Yay. But
it looks cool.
Thanks. I didn't change anything else significant, but yeah. Let's see if I actually built the plugin this time. Let's see. Oh, no, this is the one I built that it failed. Let's see. How did I build the plugin? Wait a second. Sorry. This is the app.
Bo and Cwits, do you have experience with iPlug2? Have you tried it out?
No, not zero experience.
No, also no. But I saw it in a GitHub a couple times when I was searching some information.
Oh, there it is.
But I didn't try it. So I cannot say something about it.
And Tail is with us here on the chat. And hello,
hey,
Tail. I am sure that you have not worked with iPlug2 because you have your own fork of iPlug1 and you maintain that. But since the core is iPlug, I think that you do have some experience with that. And if you have information that you'd like to share, then perhaps the differences between iPlug2 and your own fork, if you know iPlug2 enough to comment on that, it would be interesting to hear about it. I have some experience in the sense that I did something similar to Fotis. I downloaded the project and I built a plugin, and I saw the basic moving parts of iPlug2, and my understanding is that first of all, it is a much smaller project than JUCE. Much smaller.
Oh, yeah.
So it's one person, for the most part, who is developing iPlug2, while JUCE has a body of committers and maintainers. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Sometimes it's better to have one person who has a similar view of how things should be done, and as opposed to having a committee of people that you sort of don't like the way the things that they do. So iPlug2, for the boilerplate, it seems to me that the boilerplate is much more straightforward in iPlug2. When you generate a project using Producer, you get a lot of code that doesn't make a lot of sense because it's dealing with VST3 buses, or I guess plugin buses, and channel configurations, and Midi, and latency, and tails, and programs, all those things that when you're just getting started, it's a lot of material to grasp at once. And with iPlug2, it is very straightforward. There is a class with a function that is receiving a buffer, producing a buffer, and there is very little extra. And then, of course, there is the function that renders the user interface, but even that is relatively straightforward. I think it receives as argument an object that you can use to put things on the screen. So I think that the onboarding experience of iPlug2 can be even better than JUCE, but where it lacks is, I would expect in functionality, I expect that JUCE will have more features just because it's a bigger project. And also, for one thing, there is no producer to generate a project. You just download and essentially it's a glorified copy and paste of an existing Xcode and Visual Studio project. That's how you handle projects in iPlug2. It's a Python script that is essentially copy and pasting and renaming things here and there. So it's a much simpler thing, but it's probably less powerful too.
Yeah, and the only disadvantage to having a smaller team and community is that there aren't as many tutorials or...
Yeah, that's the other point I was going to bring up. Yeah, so if you want to learn JUCE, then there are tutorials on the website. There is the Audio Programmer channel on YouTube with lots of tutorials. There are more people you can talk to. And in iPlug2, you, I think, will have to dive into the source code to understand some things in there. There is no like body of knowledge about iPlug2. That may be a good thing for you. That may be a bad thing. It is what it is.
Yeah. So I built the 64-bit VST3, and Reaper can see it as well. So Cwits was right. It's not its fault that it was 32-bit, but let's see if it appears here. Yeah, there it is. Oh, wait. Huh? Wait, what? Did it make a copy in the common files folder? What? Huh? Oh, wait, because it's looking for two plugins in... when you have two plugins with the same name, Reaper only loads one of them, right? So let's see if iPlug is actually... Oh, wait, I never seen that folder before now. But yeah, this file seems to be the same. Hold on, please. I'm going to... The resources is empty. This is the 32-bit. I'm going to delete that. Actually, I'm going to delete both of those, so it's only keeps the one in my my other external drive. I don't need these things. So bye. Now let's see. Let's go back to the iPlug folder, and I'm gonna show you what happened here in my Visual Studio. And this is the moment of truth. Oh, wait. Oh, wait. Oh.
Yay.
Wait.
Drama.
Wait. Drama. Oh, it works. It works. Oh, my God. I made my first plugin. Oh.
Great.
Oh, my God.
Oh, this is brilliant.
Wait, oh my God, I feel like a kid in Christmas. I haven't felt this way since I made my first plugin in Maze. And that was my drum plugin with Maze. Oh my God, I haven't felt this feeling since it's been 2 years, right? But does it do anything? Let's use a resynth. Oh no, I'm gonna use Leandro Stone generator.
Oh,
because
thanks.
It doesn't. Yeah, there's your plug right there, because it doesn't need Midi. There it is.
And it has a killer feature. When it loads, it's not super loud.
Yeah, thanks.
It is perhaps a bit louder than it should be at -18, but I think that the tone generator that comes with Reaper loads at like -12 or something. I don't know. It's kind of annoyingly loud.
-12. I just used it today.
Yeah.
It works. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Cool.
Hello, Dom. I hope you're watching this. He is watching our live streams. I don't know if he's online right now, but yeah. Oh, thank you, Dom. Thank you so much for kickstarting, because that was the thing I was going to say before we did this. I was going to say that, yeah, my iPlug journey did fail at first, but the way that Dom guided me through his process, because he did a similar thing to mine, and the way that I did all these things with the SDK and such that I didn't do correctly with JUCE when we began. But now that I've done all this, however small this step may be, at least it made me feel slightly more confident, slightly more comfortable with this whole process. So now I feel a bit, no, I'm serious, I feel a bit more ready to go back into JUCE or to explore iPlug 2. So from now on, I am going to explore both of these a little bit more. And also I downloaded the fork from somebody's GitHub, I forget their name, but they made a framework with Air Windows ports in JUCE. And that seems to be a great starting point for me. Maybe I can load those projects in there in JUCE and / or iPlug 2. We'll see. And I'm going to look for GitHub. Maybe there are some other ready-made iPlug 2 projects that I can load. I guess Ollie Larkin has made some examples.
Yes.
So yeah, I feel more comfortable, because I was saying in a previous live stream that I had seen this other framework called Cabbage that was running in C Sound, but you guys advised me to not invest in that. Instead use JUCE and iPlug because it's a different coding language. C Sound is different than C++.
Oh, but hang on, C Sound is great. If you want to explore Cabbage, then by all means, go for it.
Okay.
I'm all about encouraging different explorations.
Yeah, it's sure. I am going to do something, because I follow Mika Frank, who has Pure Magnetic, and he makes some amazing stuff in C Sound. And he has a nice business model. He not only does he have a website with Ableton packs and C Sound plugins, but he also owns a record label, which is also called Pure Magnetic, and he runs it via Bandcamp. He releases digital, he released cassettes of albums. He has a few ambient artists and himself. He makes some great ambient minimalistic music. But the neat thing about Pure Magnetic is that some of the albums that I'm going to show you an example, his latest release on Bandcamp. I really like this business model, and maybe you guys will find it interesting too. He sells plugins and albums on the same package. So his latest Pure Magnetic release is by an artist called Taylor Dupree. Small Winters, there it is. So this is an album. I bought it. It says you own this. It costs $3, and so with $3 you get 8 tracks of ambient music and the text file that gives you a download link to a plugin that was used in this album. And I'm going to show you this plugin. Mika has made many interesting plugins, including Lore, which you can either buy as a build, or you can download the source code yourself from GitHub and build it yourself for free. Today he made a bug fix. So this is Small Winters, his latest masterpiece. So what this thing does, if I turn the wet all the way to 100, you can't hear anything, because this is works like a tape recorder with 3 tracks. let's use the first one. I'm going to set it to dry 50% so I have a little bit of headroom. So I'm going to record a few seconds and stop. Now if I press, now we only hear what we recorded. So this is a granular recorder that you can make. It's not very obvious because I'm not using a song or a more complicated waveform. You could hear how it travels, but hopefully you can understand. You can change the rate, the way it travels.
We don't hear what you're hearing, Fotis.
Oh, well, I'm not sharing the audio.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm going to stop and share again. Oh, yeah. I had the share computer sound turned off. Sorry about that. I'm going back.
Now we hear sound coming from you.
Yeah. So this is the tone generator.
Yeah.
And
I recognize that sine wave. It was of my making.
Yeah. I'm going to recreate what I did so you can see my process again. So, oh, clear. So if I turn the wet, stop it. That's my Kaspersky antivirus. If I turn the wet all the way down, you hear no sound because you need to record something into its memory. I'm going to put it in 50% so I have a little bit of headroom, like a pad. And I'm going to record a few seconds of the sine wave and stop. Now if I turn the wet, we no longer hear this. I can turn off the JSFX, so we can only hear what we recorded. And by the way, the transport is turned off. I'm not playing.
Yeah, sure.
Now I'm jumping around in the
Perhaps
grain.
it's more interesting when the sound source is not a sine wave.
Exactly, that's what I said.
Yeah.
If we want, I can try different sound. But
no, but I want to understand how this is related to the plugin ideas that you are working on.
Yeah, this is a bit experimental, and I think I have gotten a lot of fun ideas from Mika. So what you can do is record up to 3 tracks of sounds, and this is I really like this idea in plugins where you see the what everything does directly on the plugin itself. Another great idea is by Freak Show Industries, but that's a whole other subject. I'm going to devote another episode, another stream on that, because otherwise it's going to take hours. But yeah, you can either render to file. And this is what it does in a nutshell, but if you try it on a more interesting sound, like oh, and by the way, just because I want to toot my own horn again, I want you guys to hear my plugin. Yay, it works. I have a game plugin all of my own.
I think I hear the game plugin clicking. That's something that you can work on next.
Is it clicking?
If you change the gain too fast, we hear it clicking.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's a similar thing that happened with Air Windows. It's the parameter smoothing is something that I have to do.
Yep. Turn off that sine wave, Fotis.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, there is a stream in which I developed a smoothing algorithm. It's a very simple one, but it suffices for a gain knob. So you can look that up if you're interested. But I think that before we leave, first of all, I want to understand what is the relationship between the plugin, the granular synthesizer that you just showed us, and the synthesizer / sampler that you are working on?
The thing is that I can do some, because my friend Bill is an experimentalist like me. He likes these kinds of weird stuff. And we're considering doing something similar with our drum plugin because we want to make something like Aphex Twin or something that generates rhythms because Bill has a lot of free samples on his website, and some of them are regular rhythms like rock loops or jazz loops, but he also has a separate category called anti-genre, where he improvises with many weird rhythms or time signatures or BPM and stuff like that. So if I create an algorithm that analyzes Bill's drumming style, I did find a similar Max for Live device that you give it a MIDI file of a drum loop, and it analyzes the kick and the snare, and it tries to generate variations on that. I don't recall its name, but it doesn't work on Ableton 11, unfortunately, because Max has been updated. But anyway, if I manage to do something like this, where the knobs are unpredictable, maybe we can do something that doesn't change the sound, but rather the MIDI, the expression, the velocities, the humanization. When it comes a bit out of the grid, it's not completely quantized. So I'll be able to generate things similar to what Bill does with his own drums, with the recreation of his own drum. So basically, I'm going to make a plugin clone of Bill himself.
Okay. And also the iPlug2 boilerplate. I would like to look at that to see the code that you just compiled and that made work in Reaper. I would like to see that and try to make sense of what's there. Because as I said, one of the advantages, at least in my opinion, of iPlug2 when compared to JUCE for getting started is that there is a lot less boilerplate.
Yeah, and the installation was pretty simple. All I had to do was run a Python command.
Yeah. So what we have here is a class that is your plugin, and the little macro in line 10 is something that we can ignore. Then in line 11, there is something that I don't think we talked about this before on the stream. Maybe we did, but I don't remember it. So this whole syntax of open square bracket, an ampersand, close square bracket, and in parentheses, and all of that. Did we talk about this?
I don't remember. I don't recall.
No.
This is Lambda Functions.
Exactly.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, Cwits, perhaps you can explain to us what this line is doing. What is this series of strange symbols?
This is kind of a regular function, but without name. Just, I don't know how to precisely explain what this is, but this is made for making faster workflow of writing code that you don't for example you want to write some simple function, but you don't want to writing like in a separate place, and that function like a void function name, the braces, and blah 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 blah. You can write straightly in the code, like something like this.
By the way, this is how you write lambda in Greek.
Yeah, of course.
And this is the capital L.
Yeah. Okay. So,
what's that technique called? That function? What's it called? I'm going to Google it.
It is called a lambda function in C++, and it goes by different names in other programming languages. But I think in C++ you will find this under lambda functions, and
lambda functions, C++.
or perhaps anonymous functions, but probably lambda functions or lambda function objects. Yeah. So in JUCE, and I think that in some other places as well, the way that you define the function that knows how to draw the user interface for your plugin is you extend a base class that comes with the framework, and we saw that when we looked at the boilerplate generated by JUCE. You would extend from, I think it was plugin editor or something, and then there was this function, I think it was a virtual function, a pure virtual function that you had to implement. And that implementation is the body of how to draw things. For instance, which fonts to use and where to put knobs. The code that we see in lines, for instance, 21, that is drawing a knob or placing a knob on the screen, you would put that in a function that you have overwritten from a base class. And what iPlug2 does is similar, but not quite the same. Instead of inheriting and then defining or overriding a function, what we do instead is there is this member variable. M layout func is, the M is for member. And there are some people who like to use M as a prefix for all the member variables, so that when you see a function definition like we see here, it is clear what are the member variables and what are local variables. Member variables start with an M. And in this case, it's setting. So first of all, we are in the constructor, right? We can tell that because of line 5. We are defining a function called Fotis test on the class called Fotis test. So that must be the constructor. And in the constructor, we are assigning to these member variables. And typically when you assign to a variable, you assign something like a number or a string or an array. But in this case, we are assigning functions to the member variables. And a lambda is just a way of defining a function that you can define right then and there. You don't need to define somewhere else and then use a name for that function. In fact, lambda functions don't have a name. That's why sometimes they're called anonymous functions. And the syntax to define an anonymous function can be a bit confusing. So the parentheses are relatively straightforward. They're arguments to the function. So for instance, in line 15, we have a lambda function that receives one argument that is iGraphics, a pointer to iGraphics. And that is what we can use to, for instance, put a knob on the screen. So we are just defining the function, and the rest of the iPlug2 infrastructure will call this function and provide that function with an graphics object already wired and ready to go. So all we have to do is say to the plugin, please give me a graphics function that I can call to put knobs on the screen and whatnot. And then I know what to do. I know where to place the knobs and where to place the labels and so on. But then there is this extra bit of syntax to the left, and that is the open square bracket ampersand close square bracket. And that can be kind of confusing. What is that about? Well, as far as I understand, this is for you to declare what local variables you would like to have access to from within this lambda function. So in lines 15 to 22, the body of the lambda function, we could have access to variables that are local to the constructor we are at. So local to this function that starts in line 7 and goes to line 25. And we can say which variables from this context we would like to have access to. Which is kind of neat, because then if we had this function body somewhere else, we would need to pass the local variables as perhaps arguments to the function. But in this case, they are just lifted from the context where the function itself was defined and put into the lambda. And you can say a list of variables there. In this case, it's not, but you could say a list of variables that exist in this context that you would like to have access to. So for instance, in line 15, you could have open square bracket, and then, oh, I don't think we have any local variables. Well, I guess we have info from line 5.
Sorry, Leandro. The ampersand means that you are catching everything.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, you can list variables that you would like to have access to. And then if you want, you can also just say ampersand, which means I want to have them all. So the context of the function, the lambda definition, all variables that are available in the context where the lambda is defined are also available in the lambda itself. And it is sort of a glorified argument passing that is taking stuff from the context. So any variables we had in the constructor, for instance, info in line 5 or any other variables we define in the constructor body are just automatically available within the body of the lambda itself. And then I find this style comforting because I come from languages that have lambdas and that use them extensively. And even in languages that have multiple ways of doing something, I tend to favor using lambdas. But I don't really know what is the real trade-off between using a lambda versus using inheritance and overriding as JUCE does. I don't know if there is any performance trade-offs or if it's just a matter of style. Do you have some insight on this, Cwits?
About performance, I don't know, but I can say that lambdas are pretty useful, for example, in a callback functions. Then you don't have to write another function which will be used as callback. You can write just lambda, and
it's like a reference.
Making things a little bit easier.
Yeah, so for instance, we are defining a button using the graphics library, and we could attach some behavior, some function that needs to be called when the button is pressed. And we can do that with a lambda. So we can say something, I don't know iPlug2, so I don't know if this is real API that you can actually use. But in theory, you could have something like pgraphics arrow create button. And then you would pass the label to the button, what shows up as the button on the user interface. And then pass as another argument. Perhaps we could pass a lambda. So yeah, you can have lambdas within lambdas, that's fine. You could pass a lambda that is the function that must be called when the button is pressed. So that's an example of a callback function that Cwits is talking about. And it is pretty useful because then you can just define the button and the behavior associated with the button all in a single place.
For example, I'm using couple lambdas in my code when I'm loading files, but files are loaded in a different thread. So when file is finished loading, the lambda is called, and my application will know that I can work with that file.
I see.
Maybe I think I was showing once, but maybe later I can show one more time if you want.
Yeah. And
yeah, I don't have anything else to show. Do you want me to stop sharing? Does Cwits wants to?
Well, actually, I want to look at another line on this boilerplate, which is line 28, which is super interesting, because in JUCE we receive, there is a process block. It's very similar in that aspect. It is the function that will receive inputs and produce outputs. But the way that the inputs are provided and the way that you're supposed to provide the outputs is very different from iPlug2. In JUCE, we had a buffer that was a JUCE class, and we would get a writer pointer into that buffer, and we would write the outputs in place. We did that last meeting with Bo. We got a writer pointer from the buffer, and we just manipulated values in place. But in iPlug2, we, first of all, don't receive a class that comes from the framework. I think that this sample is just either double or float. And it is an array of arrays, so to speak. It's a matrix because it is one array per channel. But it's much more bare bones. And the buffer class in JUCE has a lot of utility things, like you can compute the RMS of the buffer, and I don't think that any of that exists here in iPlug 2. You're just given a bare bones pointer of sample, go figure yourself out. You can ask for the number of channels if necessary, just figure it out yourself, and then you're not supposed to write into the inputs, right? You're not supposed to overwrite that space in memory. You're supposed to just write somewhere else, which I find interesting. It's a different perspective, a different way of organizing things.
Maybe we could invite Ollie Larkin in a future stream.
Yeah, absolutely.
He could shed some light on what he's doing. He's done a lot of interviews with the Audio Programmer YouTube channel.
Yeah,
that could be a thing.
Yeah, he seems like a very nice person. But what I find interesting about this line is that it is a lot less infrastructure. It is a lot less bureaucracy involved. So this is a good and a bad thing, right? It's good because the first time you look at this, it immediately makes sense. It's also a bad thing because all the utility and nice tools that come with JUCE, they just either don't exist here or are provided in some other way. I don't know. But I find this much more straightforward. So when Theo, for instance, says that he is more of an iPlug guy than a JUCE guy, I can see why. Right. So anything else that you would like to share with us, Fotis?
No, I think that's it for me.
Okay.
For this stream.
And
I'm turning off the share screen.
And I guess for next meeting, your plan is to get back into the iPlug 2 or JUCE mind space?
Yes, both of those.
Okay.
I'm going to do some more tests with that Air Windows fork, and I'm going to do some more research. Basically, I'm going to try both of those and see what sticks with me.
Yeah, that's
like
good.
It's like having different DAWs, because I use Ableton and I use Reaper, and I use both for different reasons. So maybe I could do the same thing with iPlug and JUCE. Who knows?
All right. Okay, so I guess I can go on next because I will be brief again. Like in the previous two meetings, I will be brief. I finished reading the book that I was reading.
Oh.
And in particular, I recommend the last chapter of the book, the Tour of C++ book. I recommend that one because it is just a recollection of the main facts in the timeline of the C++ development. And I found that chapter to be down to earth and relatively short. So I recommend that to everyone if you're interested in how C++ came to be and some quirks of the language and why they exist. So I finished reading the book. Now, what I'm planning on doing next is tackling the main challenge in my plugin, in my Automixer. And that is, of course, communicating channels of audio, communicating streams of audio between plugin instances. And I already have a proof of concept of that in JS Effects, as I showed in previous meetings. But now I want to do this in C++. And the way that I think I will do that is by having some sort of global variable or a static variable, something like that. It will either be a honest to goodness global variable or a static variable. My hope, if I understand correctly the life cycle of a VST and audio units and whatnot, the life cycle is your code gets loaded and then it will instantiate objects of your audio processor for every plugin instance. But if I understand correctly, global variables and static variables or static class variables will be visible for all instances. They will be effectively like the gmem that I used in JS Effects. And because of that, I will be able to use that as the side channel to communicate samples with. So I am going to create, probably to begin with, something that doesn't even try to communicate whole streams of audio. I'll just create a static variable that is a number, and every plugin instance, when instantiated, will add to that number. And to visualize that number, I could use a debugger, but I think I will just output that number as audio. And then I will look at the audio and see if it's like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, which is a silly little thing to do, but it is a nice trick. And if that works, then I will try to write the sender and receiver. And they're going to follow the JSFX implementation, where the sender just writes and the receiver just reads. And there will be no attempt at controlling race conditions. And that's on purpose, because we don't want to have locks on the audio thread. So I don't want to have any. And also, I don't want to deal with the complexities of lock-free programming. So I would just allocate a buffer that I think will be big enough. And perhaps I will base that on the buffer size, or perhaps I'll just have a static size of, like, let's say 10,000 is enough. I would just write 10,000, or I will allocate 10,000 spaces, 10,000 slots of floating point numbers. And I will probably do that for like 64 channels and see if that flies. Yeah, that's my plan for next meeting. And that's all I have, actually. So,
by the way, yes?
Go ahead.
I was going to add something about what you said about the sender and receiver. Did you see the latest update by Toucan Studios JSFX? He recently created his own fork of the amazing JSFX Reaper denoiser, or ratio denoiser, by Neil Bigford. Basically, what Toucan did was create his own GUI, and he made his own little tweaks to the code and stuff. But what's interesting is that it has two functions, and one of them can make all of the plugins linked. So if you're having multiple tracks and you want to denoise them all at once with the same settings, you press the process all, or whatever it's called, and it copies the same values into all the instances of the JSFX. And also he has created something similar to Air Windows console. Maybe you've seen that as well. The sum channel and the sum thing, which is another method of console summing via Reaper.
Yeah.
Maybe you could take a look at those and see how
I have.
Oh.
I know of them. I didn't know about the denoiser, but I did know about the console thing. As far as I understand, that solves a simpler problem than the one I have. The problem that something solves is just on the sender side, it does some nonlinearity. Then it lets the DAW, in this case Reaper, it lets Reaper sum all the channels together. And then on the receiver side, it sees that already summed together signal, and then applies the inverse nonlinearity. So as far as I understand, that's how it works. It's similar to the Air Windows plugin. Mm-hmm. And it can, in that case, get away with this. It can get away without having to solve this more complicated problem of routing audio between plugin instances, because it can let Reaper do that. And for the denoiser, I haven't played with that one. I haven't not looked at the code for that one. But if I understand correctly, you're saying that it's not sending audio between plugin instances. It's just having a convenient way for you to set all the same settings everywhere.
Yeah.
And perhaps even to share the same noise profile. I don't know if it has that kind of learn button, and then you can share the same noise profile everywhere. Yeah, so that can be done with, and again, it's a simpler problem than streaming audio, because you have to keep streaming new audio as it comes in, as opposed to just sharing configuration once. But the way that you can do that is something that we have seen before in one of my JS effects. When I was doing the proof of concept of this side channel thing, I had a configuration that was the buffer size not from the DAW, but a buffer size from my little side channel. And that was a slider that was synchronized between all plugin instances. It's relatively straightforward to do. You use a global namespace, I guess similar in effect to what I'm going to do in C++, and you use this global namespace you write there, but you also read from there. And you use this shared space to communicate between plugin instances. So it is communication via memory sharing. Not the best way of doing communication, but in JSFX, as far as I know, it's the only way. In C++, we could do inter-process communication, we could do weirder tricks. I really hope that communication via shared memory will buy me out of this issue. We'll see.
Oh, nice. By the way, Nathan just messaged me again, and he's building another plugin, and he said maybe when it's built, if he sends it to me now, I can showcase it in this show. It's the nonlinear filter, but he added some new modes, and he would like us to take a look at it.
Okay.
I'm going to use something different other than a sine wave. I'm going to use a drum loop, so we don't have any copyright issues.
Okay. All right. Okay. And Fotis
Leandro,
and Bo, who wants to go next? Because I am all done on my side.
Leandro, what was the title of the book?
Yeah.
The book that I finished reading, it was A Tour of C++ by the creator of C++, whose name I don't know how to pronounce.
Bjarne Sostrup.
That person, yes.
Danish fellow, so I can barge my way through Danish.
Yeah.
Do you want to go next, Cwits?
Yeah, I can.
I could do it.
I can.
Yeah, sure.
So from previous time, I got some improvements of my in my project. Of my project. I'm not sure how to say it correctly. But still, I can try to show maybe. Is there something showing? Where is my camera? Why I can't
We
see?
currently don't see you, not yet.
Something changing, but I can't see it on my phone. I'm not sure why this is happening. Previous time it was working.
You've done it before, so.
Yeah, but I don't know how to fix it now. It's not working. It's something. Oh, maybe. Second.
Something happens, by the way, because the arrangement of windows in Skype changes. So Skype knows that something was supposed to have happened.
But nothing happens, yeah?
But nothing happens. I still just see your name, not your camera feed.
That's... I don't know how to deal with it.
So here's something we can try. Perhaps we can switch over to Bo and he can talk to us about his latest developments, and you can maybe go out of the call and get it back in and do all the things that one does to figure these things out. Perhaps you restart the camera, restart the computer, I don't know. But how does that sound to you?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so Bo, how are things?
Somewhat okay, I guess. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
So I made a...
But what you're sharing is just the Skype window itself. you're not sharing the whole desktop. So we just see ourselves.
It's an infinite loop.
Yeah, we see ourselves in a beautiful fractal of Leandro's and Fotis's.
This is the thing that I never learned. I can only sort of share one screen at a time. Is this the one?
Okay, now we can see your Xcode, but nothing else.
no.
So if you ever need to go to Reaper to show something, then that will not work.
No, the thing is that exporting the plugins doesn't work.
Oh.
But I've managed to create a simple interface with two sliders, rotary sliders. I copied from, I made a second channel, and I tried the standalone version of it, and it's not processing properly. I'm guessing that the left and right channel, I've not set it up properly. If you can have a look at the code, Leandro.
Yeah, on line 142, you're getting the right pointer for channel 0 again. Channel 0 is the left channel. So what you want to do on that line is to change the 0 into a 1, and that will get you the feed for the right channel. And because you had the left channel twice, channel left and right were pointing at the same place. And all hell breaks loose when you start reading and writing into that on lines 147 to 153. But with this version, if you recompile everything, it should be processing correctly, because everything else looks okay to me.
Oh, cool. And this for loop, this should only go once, right? This code.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It depends. The answer is it depends. It depends on what kind of processing you're doing. In your case, it's completely fine to have this as a single loop, and you are processing samples as they come in on the left and on the right channels. So this is similar to what we write in JSFX, where we don't have a choice because this line 144 is not available to us. It is embedded in the JSFX engine, and we only have a sample section, and that's effectively the body of this loop. So in JSFX, we are restricted to doing things this way. But in JUCE, because we receive buffers, we have flexibility. So you could, if you wanted, process the left channel, all of it, then process the right channel, all of it. And there are contexts in which you would want to do this. There are contexts in which you would want to do just the left channel first and then the right channel, because perhaps there will be some crosstalk between them and you would like to process one channel before doing the crosstalk, that kind of thing.
Okay. Cool. So this is, so it's not working off a set-sized buffer, is that the thing? So that's what this for loop is deciding, how many samples it's processing.
Yeah, so the buffer is given to us by JUCE. It's an argument to the function in line 131, and that is actually given to us by the host, by Reaper, for instance. And it will have a certain size. It will have a certain number of samples, and that depends on the buffer size in Reaper. And then in line 144, we are looping over each sample in that buffer. So we are asking the buffer, what is your size? That's what buffer.getNumSamples does. It's asking, what's your size? And then we are looping over that, or we are actually looping over both left and right channels at once.
JUCE is weird.
It takes some getting used to, but the principle is similar to iPlug2 even, and it's similar to most APIs like VSTs and audio units and blah, blah, blah. If you were to write them by hand, they would have a similar spirit there.
You get a lot of things for free in JSFX. I've realized that. So the next thing, I built the why isn't that showing? sliders in a separate window. And I need to connect the variables, the fudge and the weight variables. Let's see, plugin processor. These two, I need to connect them to the sliders. And are they supposed to be declared here?
I don't think so. We did that last time because it was the simplest thing that could work. But you do want to access these variables from within the plugin editor so that your knobs change the variables as you use the knob. So you would like the plugin editor to be able to change these variables. And right now they are local variables. They only exist within the body of that function, the process block function. So they are not accessible from plugin editor. They are not accessible from outside at all.
Mm-hmm.
So we would like to turn these two variables into member variables of the Fudge audio processor class. And the plugin editor already has an instance of, or has a pointer to, it has access to the plugin processor. So it will be able to change the member variables from the plugin processor object.
Okay. So I checked one tutorial and they for setting up the sliders, and they were in the plugin processor header.
Exactly. So that's where you declare the class, and that's where you can create member variables. And I think that making the member variables public is what you have to do to make this work, because you will want to access these variables from the plugin editor. Perhaps it would be better to have a getter and a setter. I don't have a strong opinion on this. Anyway, so doing just float weight and float fudge should work, just like you have.
All right, cool. And
I don't know about the slider 1, slider 2 thing, because I don't know what those are.
That's what I set up in the plugin editor here, Fudge Audio JUCE sliders. So that's I copied. I checked 2 different tutorials, YouTube tutorials, and this is what they did.
Ah, interesting. It's not clear to me how slider 1 and 2 member variables of the plugin editor are available here. Oh, it seems like they're not, because when you took out the comments, you can see some errors popping up. Use of undeclared identifier slider 1. So it seems like slider 1 and slider 2 are not accessible through the plugin processor, right? Because they're different classes. These variables should not be visible there. For now, how about you just stick a 0 in there, or a sensible value? Maybe for weight it will be a half, and for fudge it will be 0.1 or something. Just stick a value in there. Or maybe even better, stick the values that are in the local variables in the plugin processor implementation.
Same thing.
Okay. And
no, it says slider 1.
Yeah, probably that's a stale error message that will go away as I finish the sentence. And now in Pluginprocessor.cpp, you can go there and go to the process block function, of course. And then lines 138 and 139, you can remove these variables. You can just remove these lines.
Mm-hmm.
Because now they are member variables, and when you use fudge and weight in lines 143 and 144, for instance, they will be the member variables instead. And now the variables are member variables that you can alter, you can change the values from plugin editor.
Okay.
But still, you have to connect somehow them to the sliders.
Yes.
Yeah.
There will be some sort of callback function, like a lambda that we were talking about before, but I'm not sure if it is a lambda in JUCE. There will be some sort of callback function that is called when you change the value of the slider. And in that callback function, we will need to say plugin processor, or I guess fudge audio processor dot weight is equal to the value of the knob.
So what they did in both tutorials, they made this add listener and connected that to the interface, to the sliders.
I see. Yeah, so this add listener means that we are not using a Lambda. We will be using the old style, perhaps. I don't know if I should call it that, but it's the style of just passing an object that is a listener. And in this case, you're passing yourself. So the plugin editor is also the event handler. And then there will be a function. Just like there is a paint function starting on line 30, there will be a function that is to handle this event. I don't know how the function will be called, but there will be a function to handle this event.
Okay.
And then in that function, you will have to say, I want to update the values, the member variables from the plugin processor.
All right. How do I do that? I'm a bit lost here.
When following the tutorials, did you see any other changes you would have to make to plugin editor?
I kind of got a bit confused. I did it today, connecting the sliders to the audio processing, and it got confusing.
Okay. So, yeah, it is confusing because there is a lot of bureaucracy involved. This whole notion of the listener and whatnot. But on a high level, do you understand how the pieces are connected?
No, bureaucracy, that's not my strong suit.
Okay, so let's go over the pieces and how they're connected once more. There is the plugin processor that is handling audio. And then there is the plugin editor that is your user interface. Speaking in JS effects terms, plugin processor is your @sample section, and plugin editor is your @gfx section.
Yep.
Then your plugin processor has a member variable, and you can think of that as just a variable that is visible from everywhere. Okay? For all intents and purposes, it's a member variable. It is just a variable that is visible from everywhere.
Okay.
Then, in your plugin editor, there will be this knob, this slider, right? And then you have some lines there from line 15 to 20 that will set the knob or slider in the right location with the right label, with the right range, and blah, blah, blah. So that's just to position the thing on the screen, just to tell JUCE where to draw the slider. Then you want to attach some behavior to the event of the slider being used.
Yes.
And it can be an arbitrary function. Perhaps when you change the slider, you move the slider around, there will be a new slider that pops up, or you move a slider around and I don't know, it makes a network connection. It calls your parents. I don't know, it does something.
I sent a link to the JUCE documents where is written how to connect, how to get values from slider. There is a block called responding to slider changes, and I assume you have to write some similar code. What is written there? Like a slider value changed.
Oh, great. So that's the name of the function. Yeah, right. So we'll get to that in a moment, but there is this notion of I want something to happen when I move my slider. Okay, so that's the next actor on display. It is the person or function who is responsible for doing something when the slider is moved around. And that's your listener. It listens for events of the slider, and events on the slider are just the slider has been moved around. So when you move the slider, there will be this event of moving the slider, and some listener will be interested in listening to that event and acting on that event. So there is this, now there are three actors. There is the audio processor that is actually receiving samples and producing samples. There is the plugin editor that is drawing your user interface. And now there is this listener that is listening for events that come from the slider. Does that make sense so far?
Sure, sure.
Okay. And then this listener, it's really just a function. You can think of this listener as just a function that runs. And the function can do anything you would like. In this case, what we would like to happen is for this function to change some values in the plugin processor, the weight and the fudge parameters in the plugin processor. That's what we would like the function to do. Okay, but now they're also playing a little trick on us. In line 19, they are attaching a listener to the button. So they are connecting the function that they want to run to the button.
I just remember something from the two different tutorials that I checked. What was in these parentheses was very, very different. One guy wrote this really long line, and what's his face again? Audio programmer. Something. Oh, anyways, this is what he wrote. He just wrote this, and
yeah.
Pardon for interrupting.
So perhaps this really long line was a lambda. As we just saw when looking at the iPlug2 code, a lambda is super convenient for this case because this is essentially a callback. It's a function that you want to be called when something happens. In this case, the slider being used. And perhaps that really long line was a lambda, and then right then and there, it would update the values in the plugin processor, perhaps. But in this case, it's not. It's passing as argument this. So actors 2 and 3, the plugin editor and the guy who listens for events on the slider, they're actually the same person playing both roles. Why would you want to do this? Perhaps because you want to save yourself the trouble of creating another class just to, and it would be another class that has just one line of code to update a variable in the plugin processor. So you want to save yourself that trouble, and then you conflate roles 2 and 3 into a single class. It can be kind of confusing because a class is now responsible for drawing to the screen, and it's also responsible for acting on events on a slider. So it can be kind of confusing at first, but it is what this line does. It is what this line means. So then we get to Cwits' comment, because he found the place in the documentation that teaches you how to give this class, the Fudge Audio Processor Editor, the actual implementation of a listener so that it can actually behave as a listener. So you attached the role of listening to yourself. That's what this means. So you attach to the Fudge Audio Processor Editor itself. And now we are going to make the Fudge Audio Processor Editor into something that can actually perform that role. We are going to teach how that object can perform this role. And that's what Cwits knows how to do, right?
Cwits?
He's not online right now. He said BRB.
Okay. So, but perhaps if you just continue to follow along with the tutorial by the audio programmer, he's going to show you how to do this. So I don't know if you want to continue on the tutorial or if you want to just scramble and try to find something that does that.
I could keep going with the tutorials and sort of work my way around it, I guess. Sure, no problem.
Okay. Oh, yeah, but I can also, I think what I found is what Cwits found as well. Let's see. Yeah, okay.
Later, if you want, I can show you that plugin that Nathan sent me.
Okay. Yeah, but probably that is the tutorial because it's the tutorial. You all can see my screen, now, right? On the little Skype
Yeah,
window that
we
is my
can.
face,
Yeah.
you can see my screen now. Great. So this is a tutorial that
Oh, there's
teaches you
an
how
actual
to use
tutorial.
to use the slider class, and it seems very similar to what the audio programmer was going for. You first declare sliders, and in this case even labels, as private member variables on the plugin editor. In this case, it's doing a standalone application, so it's using a main content component, but it amounts to the same. Then it is just doing those lines that Bo already has to set the range and set the label and to attach a listener, which is yourself. So similar story. And then there is the issue of responding to slider changes. And this is the function that we need to implement.
All right. Should we get going?
Yeah, I hear you typing, but I don't see you.
That's not me.
Yeah,
Oh, that's me. Sorry,
Oh,
sorry. I
Fotis.
forgot to turn off
I thought you had already started writing the code that we need to write.
Tutorial, the slider class. Yeah, yeah. So,
Oh, look at that. I posted on the Skype call, the chat that we have going on here, a link to the tutorial that I found, and Cwits had already posted a link to the exact same tutorial, because that's what he found as well. So in there, you can open that link and go to the section about responding to slider changes.
Yeah, I'm reading it right now. So it should change. Where else? Where in what part of the project should I copy and paste this code?
It's not going to be a copy and paste this time. We will have to actually think about what we are doing.
Sure.
So I guess I will write some pseudo code. It's not going to be the actual code, but it's going to be closer to the actual code. So let me put this there. And so you all are back at looking at my screen. And in this case, this is just a standalone function, but we want this function to be part of your class. So I think that what we'll need is to have some void, and then there is, I forget the name of her class. It's like fudge, something, 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 audio editor. And then this is the magic name. We definitely want to have this name there.
Yeah.
It seems to receive as argument a pointer to a JUCE slider. And we are overriding the implementation that comes from the parent of this class. And remember that in JUCE, we use the framework by extending existing classes in the framework with our own classes. So this is an extension of a class that already exists, and that class will have a function with this name, and we are overriding that. Then we will say, oh, that's so silly. We have to see which slider was changed, right? Because this same function can be, and in your case, you already have two sliders, weight and fudge, and they both end up calling this function, right? Because in both cases, the listener is the audio editor itself. So we are going to do something similar to this, where we check which slider was touched. And this is the slider that came in, and we are checking, am I on the, I don't remember how you called, I think it was slider 1 and slider 2. So is this slider 1 or is this slider 2? And then you can check which slider was actually touched. And then it's taking these sliders and setting values to them. That doesn't really make a lot of sense in our context, because we don't want to set values to a slider, but we do want to get values from a slider. So let's use this part. So we can do something like slider 1 get value. That will get us the value of this slider. And then we can say something like fudged something audio processor dot weight is equal to slider 1 dot get value. Similarly for the other one, that will be the fudge parameter. So here is the instance of the audio processor, and we are using we are updating the member variable based on the value that we get from the slider. This should be slider 2. This is of course not functional code yet, but it is something to get us started.
Sure.
And I'm sure that in the audio programmer tutorial, he will do something like this.
All right.
Yeah. So I can, if you want, just give this to you here on the Skype call.
Let's type it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just pasted the code there, and you can give this a try, but perhaps this will not like work first try. So it's something I guess you can watch the rest of the tutorial, but and have this as a rough guide. But I'm sure you will be able to figure this out. But at least I think you now have a solid understanding of the different players in this game, how the pieces connect and whatnot, right?
Somewhat. It is gravely confusing. I sort of get it. I just need to get my head in here and grind away and learn stuff. So where should this code go? Plugin editor?
Yeah, .cpp, yes.
And
Fotis passed some useful information in chat about how to pass parameters from processor to the editor.
Yeah, Nathan cannot log into YouTube, so he just sends me these messages on Discord and I pass them on to you.
Yeah, so Nathan is saying he needs, Bo needs to pass them through the constructor. Then probably being, I don't know what actually, what Bo needs to pass through the constructor.
Load parameters from processor to editor. Like parameters from the plugin processor.
Oh, that is like for when the plugin is first loaded?
Seems like.
Okay. But for now, we are just hard coding values, and that should get us by at least this first attempt. And then Nathan continues to say, but usually you establish the parameters in the processor, and that's what we are doing. We have member variables that are the parameters, and pass them to the editor. It looks wrong, the wrong way around to me.
I posted some more stuff.
Interesting. I think that this makes sense because the editor should be responsible for changing things in the processor, not the other way around. The processor should not be querying the editor. What are the values of this slider? The editor should be responding to events and updating settings on the plugin processor. Let's see. It continues to say, oh, he meant pass float parameters from processor to editor. My advice, don't use the editor at all until your plugin is working. Use the generic editor and don't worry about all the GUI stuff yet. That's a sensible advice. In the plugin processor, there is Pluginprocessor.cpp. There is a function that is something to the effect of like has editor or something. I forget the exact name. Has editor, yeah, that. On line 155. So in there that one. This is saying this has an editor, so there is a graphical user interface for this. You can change line 157 to say return false. And then there will be no graphical user interface. It will load with just default sliders provided by the plugin host. In other words, it will look like an Air Windows plugin.
Okay.
And with that, you have less work with all of this wiring of parameters and whatnot. But there needs to be a way for you to declare that something is a slider that needs to appear in the as one of those default sliders. And I don't know how to do that, but it's probably something that you can look up, and it's probably something simpler than this whole story that we are going through of connecting sliders with parameters and whatnot. But it's useful to know how to connect these sliders because it's going to be useful further down the line.
Yeah, like 80% of the reason why I want to learn JUCE is the probability or sort of the option of making like great GUIs.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of support for GUIs and there's a lot of libraries for that. So, but baby steps, one step at a time.
Yeah.
Just make one function and plugin.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to have the plugin work with the default sliders to begin with. But I agree. If your main objective is to learn how to do the graphical stuff, then go for it. And learning about this whole notion of listeners, events, listeners updating some other variables, all of that is useful.
Absolutely. Don't use it. What were you saying, Cwits?
Fotis posted a couple more sentence from Nathan.
Yeah, he keeps sending me stuff.
Yeah,
and
so
seems like there is some different kind of defining parameter variables in JUCE, like a JUCE audio parameter floats. Not just basic floats but it seems kind of weird.
yeah, it's getting in the weeds of JUCE and how it works, but essentially the gist is Nathan is recommending to not do all of this wiring with sliders and whatnot. Just use the bare bones interface given by the host. And then he's giving us some pointers on how to get that to work. And then later, attaching GUI elements to the plugin. And it's a whole other set of lessons. It's confusing. Don't bother touching it until your plugin is working with the generic graphical user interface. Yeah, good point. It depends on what you're trying to learn, I guess. If you are trying to do a plugin that does something new in terms of audio processing, then using the default user interface is probably a good start. And if you're Chris, it's enough. You just release the plugin that way.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. At the moment, I can't get the plugins to work at all. So I can only use a standalone, but that's a computer issue, like a general computer issue. So there's a bit of got a number of hurdles to get by.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess with this new information that we have of how the different actors work and how they connect, and even fixing the little glitch on the audio processor that was getting a hold of the wrong channel. With all of that, you probably can get unstuck and continue following the tutorial by the audio programmer. I haven't watched all of them, but the ones that I have watched, they are pretty good. So you should be able to to continue, and then
Yeah, and the tutorial that Cwits found looks pretty logical as well. A question though, if, it says APVTS in the processor. Then what's the APVTS?
yeah. So on Nathan's message here on Skype, he's talking about the APVTS. That's a concept from JUCE. And it is one of those things that are jargon, right? When you're into JUCE, you know about APVTSs.
Okay.
It's the audio processor value tree stage.
All right.
Say that again. Audio processor value tree
Audio
stage.
processor value
What
tree
the
stage.
hell is that? I can briefly summarize. The audio processor is the actual audio processing thing, right? It's the thing that actually receives samples and produces samples. And the value state tree is essentially the sliders. When we are developing JS effects, we have sliders. And yesterday I mentioned how sliders are just remembered by the host. I don't have to do any extra work. When a project is saved, my sliders are saved with the project. If you can close Reaper, reopen Reaper, the sliders will be there just the same. And the APVTS is JUCE's response to that. If you have not just member variables, okay, not just member variables, but if you use this APVTS thing, then JUCE will make sure to save those variables into the Reaper project or any host's project. When you save the project, and you can close the host and reopen the host, and the sliders will be in the same position. So that's what the APVTS is responsible for.
Yeah. Getting a lot of messages here. Sorry.
Crazy.
See if there's anything. My cat has been out all day. I'm a bit worried about for her. Anyways, should we call this? I need to get grinding with this, and I had another question. I want to set it up so the fudge, the weight and the fudge value needs to interact according to a formula, and then set and then adjust that formula to get a resonance. Where in should I place that formula? So that one value of the weight gives one value for the fudge, and then when I adjust the weight, it adjusts the fudge accordingly, or the fudge value accordingly.
Probably in the... Well, hang on. Do you want to expose both of these to the user as sliders?
My idea is this. The fudge value needs to change along with the weight value according to a sort of a formula / algorithm.
Okay.
But I want to change the value of the algorithm in order to sort of get a resonance and then reduce a resonance. You get what I'm saying?
So how many sliders will there be in the user interface? Two sliders. And when you move one of the sliders, the other is going to move as well?
Not really. I'll explain it again. So the weight and the fudge, now I'm adjusting them sort of manually, and I kind of know how they're supposed to be, they're supposed to be set. But I want to sort of have a formula for automatically adjusting the fudge. So it's essentially like one knob doing both things. But on top of that, the fudge, the formula for the fudge needs to be adjusted. Do you get what I'm saying? So
you're saying that there will be one knob, so there is only one slider on the user interface, and that knob affects both variables. Fudge and weight.
Knobs. So, right. So there's two knobs. The weight now now I have two, this weight and fudge, but I want one for weight and fudge. And the second one, I want to adjust the fudge formula.
And there are different formulas you could use, so it would be like a drop-down menu. Use Formula 1, use Formula 2, use Formula 3?
Nah, not really. You see, with the fudge, it adds sample values back into the formula, into the processing, the audio processing. So you can have a resonance, or you can have a sort of smooth, like a Q value in an EQ. But the fudge value needs to be adjusted according to a formula. But I want to adjust the formula for the fudge value. So there's going to be two knobs in the end, but not as they are now.
Okay, so I think that we actually need two sliders.
Yes.
They are going to be called bananas and apples. They have nothing to do with fudge and weight. And from these two knobs, we will control fudge and weight, right?
More or less, yes.
Okay. So I guess this is something that in JS effects we would probably do on the slider section. When you move a slider, we would compute fudge and weight.
Yeah, it would be very much like you set up a dB value, a formula for dB for a slider.
Yeah, I get it.
But then you would adjust like a value in the dB formula.
I see. Yeah, so I guess the strategy would be to have the sliders, banana and apples, and then when that event handler, the listener, receives an event that changes the slider, we had some pseudocode that I showed before where we get the value from a slider. Remember that one that I pasted on Skype? You can, in that situation, don't simply get a value from a slider and set to a member variable. Instead, get a value from a slider, get a value from another slider, do some computation, do some arithmetic, and then set a member variable. So I guess that's what you're saying. When a slider has been touched, you want to just recompute a bunch of internal parameters. Similar to how if you change a slider in dB, you would recompute an amplitude. Or if you change the Q on an equalizer band, you would recompute the coefficients for the biquad. So that's a good place to do it, I think. The event handler, this listener that we are talking about, and that function with that special name, I think it was slider has changed or something, that can work similar to your add slider section in JS effects, and can be responsible for doing these sorts of computations. So I think that would be the place where you would put your formula.
In this parenthesis?
No. Remember the code we had on the Skype chat and that I showed on my screen a couple minutes ago, the code that starts with, hang on, I need to scroll up. The code that starts with like void, fudge, audio editor, slider value changed, blah, blah, blah. I think that is the place where you would put your formula.
All right, sure.
Okay.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Not so far. I'll post them in the Discord.
Yeah, so continue following along with this new information in mind. Continue following along to the audio programmer tutorials, and just make sure that the audio processing is now working with that little tweak to get a hold of the right channel correctly. And then, continue posting questions on Discord. How does that sound?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so with that, I think we can move to Cwits. Have you figured your camera issue?
Yeah, I have. See, it seems like it will work. It
is working
now. Yay!
Awesome.
I can share what I have done from the past time. On the previous time, I was on meeting, and the time I was struggling a lot with this kind of problems. But still, sorry, these have no focus, but
That's okay.
I think it will be okay. So, what I've got in past. Do you hear something? Maybe I can move like this. Is something sounds? Sorry.
I hear the clicks from the keyboard. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
There's no-
It sounds like a tambourine in the background. Using a sample.
This is hi-hat sample.
Oh,
can you turn up the volume though?
Really no, because I've got only headphones output on my Raspberry Pi, so
sure.
it will be a little bit quiet.
Mhm.
So previous time I've got hard-coded like loading Midi file and sending it to my sampler plugin.
Very impressive.
But
Nice.
what I can do now, I got Midi clip module, and now I can connect it to the sampler, and by pressing play button, it somehow sounds.
oh, it's arpeggiating it.
But what I can do for now, we can add, for example, one more sampler. Sorry, it will take a little bit time. We can add another Midi clip. So we connect the second clip to the second sampler. We will load there some audio file. Maybe something louder than hi-hat. Let's make volume. Damn. Bad file.
You have a loops and samples folder.
Yes, of course.
That's a voice.
Oh, that I was looking for. So, what we can do, I have connected this MIDI clip module to this sampler, and if we will load another MIDI file to that. No, why it's not working? Maybe here. No, there. Yesterday everything was working.
Yeah, this is a kind of a curse that always happens to me. When you want to show something to somebody, it always breaks. It's the most annoying thing in the world.
Whoa, pretty crazy. Okay, but in general, those samples for now should sound together.
Oh,
a lot of noises there, yeah. Sorry, something. Oh yeah, there is a lot of voices and they are sounding together.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, for now I
make glitch music, so this is perfect for me.
So I can make some kind of music for now.
Nice.
And this is my results for, I don't know, 1.5 months of struggling with coding and different issues, and yeah, something works, and this make me I don't know how to say it. Makes me to work further, I think. But still, I can't record some Midi from these pads, and this will be the next part of making these things work.
So right now you can sequence and edit the media events, but you cannot play them live?
I can play them, but I cannot edit them for now. But I can load like a pre-recorded, pre-written MIDI files to my program and connect them to any audio source and like press play and they are playing. So.
By the way, Cwits, are you familiar with Loop Midi? It's a driver. I don't remember if it's cross-platform. I have it on Windows, and the word loop doesn't mean like audio loops. It's the name of a driver that allows multiple software to communicate via Midi. So when using Loop Midi, I could send and receive MIDI notes from between DAWs. I could send notes from Reaper to Ableton, or I could send notes from Bespoke to Ableton. So maybe you can check that out and see. Maybe you can send notes from your computer to your push, or...
No, I didn't heard about that. Maybe you can send me a link.
Sure, I'm gonna send the link
where
on
I
the
can
chat.
Find some information about it.
Sure. I'm gonna look it up now.
For example, I added another module, which one is simple. Oh no, it's not working. Wow, why it's not working? Okay, because I not connected it to the mixer.
Cwits, do you use Windows?
Yes.
Okay, because it's Windows only apparently. But yeah,
so
here it is.
This is basic sine wave generator, as you can see on the screen, and maybe here.
Yeah, we can hear
something also. And I can connect, for example, this MIDI clip to that sine wave generator, and it also will be playing. Nice. I have some performance issues because this is not like a... Sorry, I will remove this. Leandro, I will turn off my camera, okay?
Okay.
Can I show you guys Nathan's VST? Or do you want to wrap up?
Oh, I actually want to hear more from Cwits. He said that this was the result of 1.5 months of struggling, and I want to hear the highlights. And also he mentioned on Discord that he was rewriting something over and over, and I would like to know what motivated that and what was the end result.
Something glitched. Okay. Of this noises. But yes, still I got some performance issues, and I don't know how to deal with them. But yeah, maybe some of you remember that I got some bugs previous time with real-time audio generation. It was because I have this function. Sorry, where it's sent, which is called by the jack audio in the real time, and I was rendering audio frame straightly in this function, and this was calling some performance issues, so I moved from the real-time generation of audio to the just, I think, non-real time, and I'm rendering frame of audio not in real time, but in the gaps between that audio callback is occurring.
I see.
I think there should be different ways to make this better, but I don't know them for now. So yeah, this is some kind of solution, but not so good solution.
But it's a clever little trick. So you're interleaving the two activities, right?
Yeah. I got these things happens in different threads. Like in the audio engine, I'm creating new jack thread, which is serving only for calling this function. But so yeah. What else? I don't know, Leandro. Maybe you have some questions. I can show maybe some Lambda function callbacks.
Yeah. You said that you ended up using lambdas here and there, and I would like to see where. Perhaps as callbacks, but perhaps with some other things as well.
For example, I got that sampler which have to load files, but I also got some kind of file factory which working in different thread. So really I can't load file to the sampler and straightly start to using it, because it will cause the segmentation file fails. Yeah. The reason of that is that the actual audio raw data wasn't loaded by the time, but the sampler, for example, if I'm playing something here, for example, if I'm trying to access that raw audio data and it is not loaded yet, I can get some errors. But in the load file function, I'm making Lambda function. You can see similar syntax what we saw in Bo showed us. No, Fotis showed us some Lambda functions. Yeah, but I don't have here ampersand, for example. So I'm not catching anything from this class. I'm passing this class as a reference to my file factory for using it later here in Lambda.
But it's quite interesting because you're saying that if you tried to just load the file and start using it, the file would not have been loaded, so you would get a segmentation fault. What I find interesting about that is that it seems like there is no way to read a file synchronously, in the sense of you want to read a file. Okay, wait, your program will not continue to execute. I will go and read the file for you, and when I'm done, I'm going to continue running your program. There is no way for you to do that?
There is way, but there is also a problem, because reading a file is a more slower operation than using the RAM memory, because file is located in the, I don't know, on a USB stick or on my hard drive or somewhere else. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is much slower than the RAM memory. and I have to load that file from my storage to the RAM, and then I can use like in a faster way, faster accessing to the raw data.
Absolutely, yeah. Reading a file from the file system is definitely slower than just reading variables from memory, but why is that an issue? Why are you trying to like read a file in the audio thread?
Really hard question for me. I want to manipulate that raw data in a different ways. For example, I want to pass there some silence or cut some edges of file or somehow differently manipulate with that file. So I have to hold all the audio file in memory. Okay, maybe there is some algorithms or ways to get the pieces of sound from the file storage, but I'm not figured out yet how to do that.
Okay, I ask that because typically if you can do something synchronously, just wait for a file to finish loading before continue running your program. Typically, if you can do that, it is conceptually simpler to do that. But in some cases, you cannot do that. And then you have to resort to this asynchronous function, because request file load is definitely asynchronous. You are requesting that file load to happen, and then when it's done, it will call the callback function.
Yeah, it will call my Lambda function where I'm passing the pointer to the file and then placing flag like file ready, and then my sampler can use that file.
I see.
But not earlier. The reason of doing things synchronously, the problem is on doing things synchronously is that audio is continuous. You can just stop it, ask to, I don't know, program, musician, other people to wait a second, I will load file, and then I will continue playing.
Oh, so you are reading the file from the audio thread. Because if you're reading on a different thread, then these two things could occur simultaneously, right? Your audio thread would be processing audio, and this audio thread would be reading a file. When the file is done, it will do something. But it could read the file synchronously because it's not blocking the audio thread.
If I will read file from audio thread, it will block, because this is also heavy operation and it took a lot of time. Basically more than I don't know how much time is passing between two callbacks of the jack function. It's like I don't know, where's my calculator? Like 4,400. How to calculate the time? In a second, it was 1,000. It's like 22 milliseconds between callbacks.
Yeah, that's too much.
Between those real-time callbacks, and it's not too much. It's too few. And file is loading way longer, especially when file is big enough. For example,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
minutes,
to load a file will probably be slower than that, and you don't want to drop samples in the middle while you are reading a file.
Yes, and I want to audio thread processing music and playing while I'm loading different file. For example, imagine I'm jamming, something, playing live music, and I want to add another sampler and add it to mix. I can't just press stop, and as I mentioned, say everybody to wait a second. I will load the file.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay, that makes sense.
And-
So yeah,
and this
lambdas will be familiar for people who have experience with, for instance, Node.js. The whole API for reading and writing files looks like this. And you pass a callback argument, or these days you work with promises, but the intent is similar. You say, I want to load this file. I will continue doing other things. When the file is done, I will receive this event and treat that event with a callback. All right. More things that you would like to share?
I trying to. Yeah, and this is how it looks like from the different end. When file is loaded, I'm just like calling callback function, which one is Lambda function.
Mm-hmm.
This one with the parameters I passed there.
Very,
Somehow like
very
this.
impressive work.
Not very impressive in my opinion, because as more code I'm writing, as more it becomes a mess in my opinion.
Oh, no.
It still works very well, and it's impressive. Your progress has been miles away.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so for next time, do you know what you're planning on doing?
Yeah, as I said I will try to start recording Midi. Also, if you guys remember, I have problems with the buffer size of Jack. I cannot do it less than 1024 samples. What I have done, I have ordered from China, from AliExpress, some small modules like ADC and DEC modules, like analog to digital converters and digital to analog converter.
ADC and DC.
Yeah, I have to solder them right now, but I hope I will do this in this week or maybe next week or when. I don't know when.
So how does that
maybe in
affect the buffer size in Jack?
The problem there was, if I remember correctly, that built-in audio output of Raspberry Pi was somehow connected together with HDMI connector, something like that. I don't remember correctly. And there is some limitations for buffer size, for frequency maybe also. I'm not remember, and I hope that external ADC and DEC will help me. Also, I want to try to record some audio, and because
Okay.
Raspberry don't have analog to digital converter built in.
All right.
Oh, by the way, speaking of HDMI, Cwits, you need to check out the various versions of HDMI because they have some differences in their data transfer capabilities. So maybe the higher version of USB cable and port that you use, the more data I think you can transfer per second.
And do you know if it
Because,
affects
you know,
latency? Because it seems like the issue is latency, not
maybe
the
because
bandwidth.
the latest versions of HDMI support 4K VDL and Dolby Atmos audio. That's a lot of data that you can't transfer with the previous.
Yeah, but that's all about
HDMI.
bandwidth, right? It's the amount of data,
Yeah.
and the issue seems to be latency, how long data takes to come across. and these are independent.
I'm not sure that there is problem with the protocol version. I think that audio output of Raspberry Pi is somehow synchronized with the HDMI, and they somehow disturb each other. Maybe. I'm not sure. I didn't dig deeply, so I just found in some forum that there is some kind of problem and you can't do buffer size less than 1024.
Oh, by the way, I just sent on the chat. Maybe Cwits is interested in some portable DACs and ADCs, but the name is kind of weird because they're called sheet audio, and that was their intent. They actually named. That was a joke, but I've heard that their hardware is very good and they have very low prices.
Maybe I really need some audio interface for my computer.
Oh.
All right. Okay, so seems like we all have our homework, and Fotis, next time you can talk to us about Nathan's filters, or maybe even Nathan will be able to join us. And I would also like to hear about your experience reading that C++ book you showed before, but we didn't really talk about it. So I'll keep a note for next time. But I think with that we can wrap it up. This has been a great meeting. Any last words from you all?
Not much on my end. Just a general thank you to everyone.
Yeah. Also.
And also, I really love both JSFX, the Hull filter and the Fudge filter. I did some sound design work this week, and they get my seal of approval.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you all for joining me. It's always fun to talk to you all and see what you're up to. And
same.
I invite everyone to join us on the stream tomorrow when we'll have Dale to talk to us about analog modeling. I'm looking forward to that. It will be a lot of fun. He definitely has a lot of experience because he has developed plugins that emulate analog gear, mainly synthesizers, for Martinic, his company. Sorry, what was that?
When on
tomorrow
next meeting?
Yeah, tomorrow Dale will join us. So tomorrow, Thursday, same time. And he has developed plugins for his own company as well as for Arturia. So his own company is Martinic. And he will show us his workflow using some simulators to simulate circuits in the computer, but also how to turn them into actual code that runs in real time in a VST. So make sure that you all join us tomorrow for this. And with that, thank you very much. And
thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for watching the stream. You know how great it has been. Or maybe it sucked, and I am glad that you stuck with me. And soon we'll all be back together for some more coding or talking or chilling. The next time I'll be streaming.